What really happened on May 21? We all know that George Floyd was killed on May 25, 2020. But what about May 21? Well, it turns out that several massive protests erupted across the United States on this day in 2020 against racial inequality and police brutality following George Floyd's death. But what else happened on May 21? Well, we're about to find out. Welcome to our channel. And today we'll be answering the question, what really happened on May 23rd? From an anti-slavery massacre to one of the most violent riots in American history. Here are 5 things that happened on this day. In 1856, the pro-slavery forces attacked the town of Lawrence, Kansas, killing at least 2 anti-slavery men and destroying thousands of dollars worth of property. At the time, Kansas was a hotly contested territory with pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers clashing frequently over whether slavery should be allowed there. The attack on Lawrence was one of the most violent incidents in the escalating conflict known as Bleeding Kansas. The attack was part of a larger strategy by pro-slavery forces to control the territory and ensure its admission to the Union as a slave state. They hoped that if they could intimidate and drive out the anti-slavery settlers, they would have the territory to themselves and could easily push it into the Confederacy. However, the attack backfired and instead galvanized opposition to slavery in the territory. It also contributed to the outbreak of the Civil War just a few years later. So what started out as an attempt to preserve slavery ended up accelerating its demise. On May 21, 1971, the White Night riots broke out in San Francisco's Chinatown neighborhood after a group of white men attacked a Chinese-American student. The incident was the latest in a series of attacks on Asian Americans in the city, and it sparked outrage among the local Chinese community. As word spread about the attack, thousands of Chinese Americans took to the streets to protest, clashing with police and causing widespread damage. The violence continued for several nights, with thousands of people arrested and hundreds injured. The riots were a turning point in the city's history, and they helped to raise awareness of the issue of Asian American discrimination and violence. In the wake of the riots, the city government took steps to address the issue, including creating new laws to protect against hate crimes and discrimination. Additionally, the riots helped to galvanize the Asian American community and led to the formation of new organizations dedicated to fighting for civil rights and social justice. In 1943, the deadliest race riot in American history broke out in Detroit, Michigan. The incident began with a minor altercation between a white serviceman and a black woman and quickly escalated into a full-blown riot. Over the next 3 days, white mobs rampaged through the city, targeting black businesses and homes and leaving 6 dead and hundreds injured. The riot was one of the most violent episodes of racial unrest in U.S. history, and it exposed the deep-seated racial tensions in American society. The immediate cause of the riot was a dispute between a white serviceman and a black female factory worker that escalated into a physical altercation. However, the underlying causes were much more complex and had been building for years. During World War II, there had been growing tensions between blacks and whites over issues such as housing, employment, and discrimination. The influx of black workers into defense-related industries had increased competition for jobs and housing, leading to resentment and hostility among some white workers. Additionally, the legacy of Jim Crow segregation and the persistence of racial stereotypes and prejudices had created a climate of mistrust and tension between the two communities. The riot was eventually put down by the National Guard and federal troops, but it left a lasting impact on the city and the nation. It highlighted the urgent need to address the issue of racial inequality and the persistence of racism in American society. The aftermath of the riot saw calls for greater civil rights protections for blacks and a renewed commitment to fighting against discrimination and prejudice. It also led to the creation of new organizations and initiatives aimed at promoting racial harmony and understanding. Despite the progress that had been made since the early 20th century, the Detroit riot was a stark reminder of the challenges that still lay ahead in the struggle for racial equality. In 2021, Protests erupted around the world as people showed solidarity with Palestine during the latest conflict between Israel and Palestine. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets of cities around the world, including London, Paris, and New York City, to protest Israel's actions in Gaza. The demonstrations were some of the largest and most widespread in recent years, and they reflected the growing international concern over the humanitarian situation in Gaza. The protesters called for an end to the violence and for the protection of Palestinian civilians. They also demanded that Israel lift the economic sanctions that have been imposed on Gaza, which have had a devastating impact on the living conditions of Palestinians there. The protests were met with a mixed response from world leaders. Some, like Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, have spoken out in support of Palestine and called for a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Others, like Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, have defended Israel's actions and accused Hamas of provoking the conflict. Despite the international condemnation, Israel has continued its airstrikes on Gaza, which have resulted in the deaths of hundreds of Palestinian civilians. The situation remains tense and there is little hope for a quick resolution to the conflict. Now, what does this all mean? These events serve as a reminder of the ongoing struggle for justice and equality. From the anti-slavery movement to the fight for civil rights, the events of May 21st show that the road to freedom and equality is not always easy. It's a constant struggle that requires courage, determination, and sacrifice. Those who fought for equality and justice on May 21st throughout history have paved the way for future generations to continue the fight. Their bravery and sacrifice should inspire us to keep pushing forward and to never give up in the face of adversity. But what can we do to honor their legacy? We can start by educating ourselves about the struggles and achievements of those who came before us. By learning from their experiences, we can better understand the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. We can also support organizations and initiatives that are working to advance the causes of justice and equality. By donating our time or resources, we can help make a real difference in the world. Finally, we must continue to speak out against injustice and discrimination wherever we see it. By using our voices to stand up for what is right, we can help create a more just and equitable world for all. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Which event on May 21st surprised you the most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, please don't forget to like this video. It really helps us out. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.